superwise story about sex in Greek mythology. There was once a young Greek man named Tiresias. One day, as he was walking on a mountain in the Peloponnese, he saw two snakes having sex. For some reason, instead of going about his business and letting them have fun, Tiresias decided to grab a stick and strike them. Hera, the goddess of marriage and family, got angry and turned Tiresias into a woman as punishment. He spent 7 years in female form until he met another pair of snakes and proved himself or herself wiser by letting them be. He was then reinstated to his original male form. Some time passed, and then one day, Zeus and Hera got into a heated argument. Zeus claimed women enjoy sex more than men, and Hera maintained the opposite. After some bickering, they got an idea. Who would be more capable of answering the question than a person who had lived and had sex as both a man and a woman? Yes, it seems Tiresias hadn't let his 7 years as woman pass idly. It was a unique experience that not even the gods had ever had. So Zeus and Hera appeared before Tiresias and posed their question. Tiresias boldly answered, "Of 10 parts, a man enjoys 1, and a woman enjoys 9. Hera, being quite prudish, was displeased again. This time, she struck Tiresias with permanent blindness. Zeus couldn't heal him, so he granted him a very long life and powerful prophetic abilities in compensation, thus making him the revered prophet we see in the Odyssey, Oedipus Rex, and elsewhere. Green Children. The legend of the Green Children of Woolpit concerns 2 children of unusual skin colour who reportedly appeared in the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England, sometime in the 12th century, perhaps during the reign of King Stephen, 1135–1154. The children, found to be brother and sister, were of generally normal appearance, except for the green colour of their skin. They spoke in an unknown language and would eat only raw, broad beans. Eventually, they learned to eat other food and lost their green colour. But the boy was sickly and died soon after his sister was baptized. After she learned to speak English, the girl explained that she and her brother had come from a land where the sun never shone. The light was like twilight and everything there was green. The Year Without a Summer, 1816. The Year Without a Summer was an agricultural disaster. Historians called it the last great subsistence crisis in the Western world. The climatic aberrations of 1816 had their greatest effect on New England, Atlantic Canada, and Western Europe. On the 6th June 1816, it snowed in Albany, New York, and Dennisville, Maine. The main cause of the Year Without a Summer is generally held to be a volcanic winter created by the April 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora on Sumbawa, Indonesia. The eruption had a volcanic explosivity index, VEI, ranking of 7, ejected at least 100 km² of dense rock equivalent material into the atmosphere, and the eruption column height was 44 kilometers. It remains the most recent confirmed VEI 7 eruption to date. Caligula versus Neptune. Caligula, Roman Empire, was returning home from a failed invasion of Britain and desperate to have a war with something. Since it would be embarrassing to go home empty-handed, he declared war on Neptune, god of sea, and ordered soldiers to stab the water and ordered them to collect seashells from the beach as war trophies. Vampire fatwa in Ottoman Empire. In the middle of 16th century in Ottoman Empire, villagers from the provinces of Balkans arrived at the court of Sheikh al-Islam, master of Islam, Ebu Suud, the top Islamic religious authority of the empire in the reign of Sulaiman the Magnificent, reporting something strange. The terrified peasants spoke of corpses rising from the pits, absorbing people's lives, and when their graves were investigated, red streaks like blood were seen on their faces, and they were uncorrupted, in a position other than that which had been buried. Skeptical about the veracity of the complaints, But wanting to calm the panicked people's spirits, Ebu Suud reported that he did not find in the sacred sources of the Islamic Sharia something specific for such a creature, then suggested through a fatwa, which is ruling by religious authority on a point of Islamic law, the following: if the corpse seemed to move, it should be nailed to the ground. If it were to rise again, it should have its head pulled out and placed on its feet. However, if he got up again, the body should be incinerated. The longest poem ever written, Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is Sanskrit and the longest epic poem known. The bulk of the Mahabharata was probably compiled between the 3rd century BC. Its longest version consists of over 100,000 shloka, or over 200,000 individual verse lines, since each shloka is a couplet and long prose passages. At about 1.8 million words in total, the Mahabharata is roughly 10 times the length of the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. It narrates the events and aftermath of the Kurukshetra war to Iron Age India of the 10th century BC, a war of succession between two groups of princely cousins, the Kauravas and the Pandavas. It also contains philosophical and devotional material, such as a discussion of the 4 goals of life. So far, no significant action in the Western world. Imagine that you were born in the year 1900 at Western world. At 14 years old, the First World War began, which ended only at 18 years old, with 22 million deaths. Shortly thereafter, a global pandemic appears, the Spanish flu, killing 50 million people. And you are still alive, at 20 years old. At 29, you survive the global economic crisis that began with the collapse of the New York Stock Exchange, which causes inflation, unemployment, and hunger. At the age of 39, the Second World War begins, which ends at the age of 45 with 70 million deaths. At 52, the Korean War begins. At 64, the Vietnam War begins and ends at 75. Today, we had a major pandemic just for a couple of years and we are scared and tired. Beard tax. In 1698, Tsar Peter the V of Russia instituted a beard tax as part of an effort to bring Russian society in line with Western European models. To enforce the ban on beards, the Tsar empowered police to forcibly and publicly shave those who refused to pay the tax. Those who paid the tax were required to carry a beard token, which was a copper or silver token with a Russian eagle on the reverse and on the obverse, the lower part, of a face with nose, mouth, whiskers, and beard. Dancing plague of 1518. The outbreak began in July 1518 when a woman called Frau Trophea began to dance fervently and uncontrollably in a street in Strasbourg, France. Trophea kept up the constant dancing for a week. Soon, 36 others joined in. By August, the dancing plagues had claimed 400 victims. Dancers were beginning to collapse. It is said some even died from a stroke or heart attack. No one knew what caused this reaction. By early September, the outbreak began to subside when the dancers were sent to a mountain shrine to pray for absolution. Public toilets in Roman Empire. Strange, but true. For physiological needs, the ancient Romans used public latrines and performed in front of other people, without the need for privacy. They used a sponge on a stick called a tersorium to clean themselves after using the toilet. In the center of the latrine there was a channel with clean water in which you could dip that sponge. After the ablution, the sponge was thrown into a special container where it was recovered by the servants, washed and prepared for reuse for other men.